So what you've just seen is Counterfeit Part 4. We are leaving the desert now and coming to the city of Las Vegas. You will also see that I used a different camera angle this time. So I changed from the windscreen point of view to the co-driver point of view, which I found pretty interesting. Because when you sit next to somebody who's driving, you always end up, looking outside the window. And I wanted to have this spontaneous moment captured in that video. Which is even a bit more personal view, even because you get the chance to look into somebody's face who is driving next to you or standing at a traffic light, waiting. And some of those people, you will see that when you watch the whole video, will even look at you and have a question mark in their eyes why you would record that video and for what purpose. I was even afraid at some point that a taxi driver was jumping out and grabbing my GoPro because he obviously didn't like what I do. And he looked, I wouldn't say angry, but he was very, irritated about the recordings. Coming from the desert to Las Vegas is, of course, coming from purity and beauty into, I wouldn't call it Sin City, because it's not always, this Sin City kind of thing that everybody thinks it is, but it's a conglomerate, and it's a melting pot of so many things, and it's such a huge contrast. When compared to nature. I had a chance to go around the city because I visited a friend who at that time did a very big LCD installation in one of the biggest, newest and hippest clubs of the town. He was basically working all day, so I had spare time all day because he wasn't available for me to go out and have a dinner or have a drink or something. So I was going around and do all those recordings. And in the evenings we would hang out in that club, and because he was doing the technical installation and he was also doing the briefing for the team, so the people could later work with that system. So we were standing on a small stage, looking at the crowd in the club at midnight, when DJ Tiesto would play, and it was amazing. I mean, when you go in a club in Vegas, it's nothing that would compare to, I don't know, to a club in Berlin. Not even Berghain, maybe. It's a different style because it's different culture, and people would appreciate, that it's so over the top. There's strobo light and there's, glamours falling out from the ceiling, and there's steam and foam and whatever, and you totally go nuts. It's nothing that you could stand for long. But that was the way that is the reason why I was in Vegas and why I got to shoot those scenes, which I liked. I took the afternoon hours because that is the time when, the least people would be on the streets. So it wouldn't be the morning rush, and it wouldn't be, the crowd that you would find on the strip in the evenings. And it gave me the opportunity to also show Vegas from a side that you don't get to see very often. At parts, the street would look very empty, and it would almost look like a zombie sort of town that is, that you're just going through and don't want, I don't know. So an equally important part of that concept is definitely also the audio and the way I created the audio. So in former years, I would use tons of hardware in order to compose structures and tracks, and I've doing that for a very long time. I was involved even in prototyping new synthesizers that Yamaha would bring out. Maybe some of you remember the Tenorion. It's an LED synthesizer with 256 LEDs that you could play on a grid just with your thumbs. You would set notes that the system or the sequencer would play when the locator would run from left to right. Pretty amazing instrument, and I had a bunch of those. And working with hardware is always a curse and a beautiful thing at the same time. For me, growing up with hardware, pretty much, at some point I just got rid of everything because I didn't feel creative anymore with the instruments and with the all those drum machines and beautiful things, but I always find myself in the same musical corner, bringing out the same musical structures, same harmonies, and I just wanted to get rid of that effect, and so I sold everything, and I switched over to computer-based workstations, laptops, which would add the moment of mobility to your working process, because now you could sit in a park with your sound card and create things on the fly without having a huge studio, without putting cables from A to B, and being really out in the nowhere and when you feel creative, when you don't have your studio around, do something. So that was definitely one important aspect. I also left the stage of purely composing music, working on MIDI channels, moving tones from left to right in order to make them, fit a grid. I got very interested at a late stage in sampling. So I would look up the internet for MP3, speech samples, advertisement spots, everything that is strange, even film scenes from, from a Hitchcock movie or from whatever. I like the tonality, I like the voice, I like the sound of speech. When somebody is talking, I found that to become a very prominent element of my recordings later. And additionally, I also got my hands on tools that would allow me to resample music, that would allow me to take existing music and process it in a way that you wouldn't, under no circumstance, know what the original would be. And that comes back to something that I explained earlier, about all the musical aspects that were important to me when I grew up, when I was youth. I had one very important moment in my life where I had a very bad motorbike accident and where I was, forced to be in a hospital for a year. So I was lying down in the bed for 1 year, age 18. It's a pretty difficult time, because everybody's going out, having fun, going to parties, but I couldn't. It wasn't even the internet area, so the internet age, I couldn't, there was no mobile phone, there was no computer, there was nothing. It was just boring all day long. So I got my hands on a few records, like U2, I guess, was it in '87, Joshua Tree, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Liverpool, Talk Talk, The Color of Spring. So those became records that really, got into my mind, and they're still sitting here because I listened to them endlessly. A couple of those tracks, or specific tracks, I used in Cathedral City Counterfeits without you noticing it, because they're, as I said, they're so heavily processed that you don't see the original version anymore. But there's definitely one that I took from Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Maximum Joy, I guess. I took one from Talk Talk. I don't remember what it was. The first track, the first Counterfeit, that is also then a good reference to why I did this project, is an artist called JFC. So nothing to do with JC. It's JFC, it's an electronic artist, and he released a record on Electrolux, the very famous Frankfurt label, who also did the Space Night videos that I was watching. So I came over him using one of his tracks and the Space Night also to the concept of why I'm ending up doing what I'm doing. Talking about this, let's say, entertaining / soothing video effect plus music that you could watch for ages. Everybody who remembers the format, I guess they aired it around midnight, and it was on air for, 3 or 4 hours every night. Pretty famous one. These were basically the elements. So there's a very personal part of my life attached to that project that I would, at a much later stage, combine with a video that I shot. That helped me also a little bit to understand my own life a bit better, because when you're getting older, you have these moments where you think about what was good and bad, and I guess everybody has that feeling inside, that romantic mood when you think about your youth, when things are so fresh and young and you experience stuff for the first time. That's amazing, and the older you grow, the more mature you get, those moments get very rare. And for me, it helped me to better understand, what I've been through, and to also, put it finally as a project into a specific corner where I can look at and always remember, because it's a very eclectic thing, different parts of my life coming together in one, and that is, for me personally, what this project is about. So we're coming close to the end of this STRRR session, which brings me to the last track I want to present to you today. It's Counterfeit 6. And I hope you enjoyed being around. Thanks for watching.